Hi, everyone. It is a little bit after 12, so we're going to get started with this month's Hawk Talk. We have Tony Metoyer, who will be speaking on innovation this afternoon. If you have any questions, please use the chat function, and you can either chat them to everyone or you can chat them to me under Illinois Tech Alumni Engagement or to Kristen Kipke directly. So with that, I will turn it over to Tony to get started.
All right, thank you, Kristen. Let's see, as she said, my name is Tony Metoyer. Currently working at the Boeing Company, and I've got a couple slides to orient you to myself, but then some slides to get into the conversation and have some dialogue around innovation. So with that, we'll get right into it. And hopefully I've left some time at the end for Q&A or some follow-on discussions if we haven't addressed them by the time we get to that section. So let me get started. So the overview for today's discussion is, like I said, I'll give a little bit of background on myself, talk a little bit about the highlights of some of the things that we have at Boeing, and then get into the three parts of innovation. I tried to structure the briefing around these three pieces of how we encourage innovation, how it grows, and then how we make sure that it's being developed and sustained through the enterprise and through different things that we do. So with that, let me get to going to the next chart. So as far as personal background, I grew up in Chicago. I received the BS degree in mechanical engineering from IIT in 1977. I just put that date on since everyone sees the date, so I may as well keep it on everything. I also received an MBA degree from Indiana University shortly after getting my mechanical engineering degree after I worked for a few years. My first full-time assignment after graduating with my BS degree was at Clark Equipment. I started off in product development. I was a project engineer responsible for developing new products within their axle division. So I developed new drivetrains for forklift trucks, construction equipment, things of that nature, both design, prototyping, and working it all the way through to the manufacturing phase. After doing that for a couple of years, I moved over to get my MBA, which is when I start doing financial analysis and business planning for Clark. Basically, I moved from the engineering side of the conversation where we talked about the technical aspects of different programs to the business side where we combine both the technical and business aspects to be sure that the products that we're working on in the new programs were going to be beneficial to the company. After doing that for a year or so, my wife and I decided it was time to maybe move to some larger cities, so we decided to move to St. Louis, where I began working for Boeing, then McDonnell Douglas, in an organization called Business Development. And that was a competitive assessment, doing a little bit more financial planning for the astronautics group. So working in the space, weapons, that aspect of the McDonnell Douglas Boeing Company. Then I moved over to do advanced programs and technology in our weapons systems group. Think of that as all of the next generation of platforms and weapons that the company was working on. I then moved over to work advanced programs in our Washington, D.C. office, and I had a few major initiatives that we were competing on at the time that I worked both with the Pentagon Acquisition and Requirements Organization, as well as some of the congressional activities supporting those programs in terms of the offerings that we had, what we were trying to do, etc. In 2001, I came back to Seattle to work strategic innovation planning. It was a new initiative that we had at the time, looking at how do we really shape our technology and work new activities and new programs. Shortly after working that, after a couple of years, I moved over to take over the business development group inside of Boeing Research and Technology, and that inside of that organization, we go after government resources to support our technology development, which brings me all the way to the job I have today, which is in operation and compliance. And so I've got the operations organization for our research and technology group inside of the Boeing Company, and I'll say a little bit more about those organizations in a minute. But I guess the point of going through my background is that, I've been working either in the technology, new product development, new technology space for the vast majority of my career. So, I've heard a lot about innovation. We've had a lot of things both inside the Boeing Company and other organizations I've been in. So this is a bit very interesting to kind of go through this and share some of my thoughts with you around innovation and what we do inside the Boeing Company. So the next first chart, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about some of the awesome products that we make at Boeing. Boeing, I'll get into a little more detail in a minute of what we are, but our products span the space from commercial airplanes, military platforms, space platforms, new technology services. So the point of this chart is to say, as we look at innovation, we look at it across a very wide spectrum of both supporting things we do today and some of the future concepts that are being worked across the company. So in terms of the Boeing Company, we are over 100 years old. I think this is our 102nd year in existence, founded in 1916 out in the Puget Sound area. We've been a combination of merging several companies together: the Boeing Company, the McDonnell Douglas Company, Hughes, Rockwell International, to become one of the leaders in the aerospace community. The way our company is organized today, we've got commercial airplanes, which has the Boeing 7 series of platforms, which I'm sure everyone's familiar with. Our defense and space systems and security, that's the organization that primarily deals with our tactical platforms, weapons, space systems. And then the third part of our business is our global services business, which is a new venture that we started a few years ago, really focused on bringing together support for the various platforms that we offer to our end customers, as well as offering some of those products and solutions to customers that don't have our platform. So it's a new service area that we've reached into over the last couple of years, really pulling those pieces from the existing business units to create the stand-up organization for that area. In terms of size, kind of give you some perspective of the size of Boeing. The 93 is a 2017 number. In 2018, we topped the $100 billion mark, so that gives you a feel for the size. It's about 2/3 commercial, 1/3 military, and then, as I said, still growing in the services area. As it says on there, we contract with over 20,000 suppliers and partners globally. Today, we've got about 156,000 employees. This is from a year ago, as well as having presence in about 65 countries. And supporting all of that, we do have our research, design, and technology organization that supports the company. So getting into a little bit more around the innovation part, as I said, I'm in the research and technology organization. We support all three of our product spaces. So the commercial group, the defense and space group, and our global services are all supported by a common independent R&D organization looking at advanced technologies, advanced research activities that help fuel the different products and applications that we have into that second century. There are not very many companies that have been around 100 years, and so one of our focus you'll see as we talk about some innovation and things that we do is to be sure that we're doing the things that need to be done to be sure we're going to be successful in that second century. And I think as we looked back on companies that have struggled with passing that 100-year mark in the past, it's been around not innovating, not staying at the leading edge of the industry and the sector that you're in. So in terms of our BR&T organization, we've got about 3,700 employees inside of BR&T. Hope you don't mind the acronyms every now and then, but our Boeing Research and Technology Organization, about half of those have advanced degrees, either master's or PhD degrees. About over 410 of those are technical fellows. We have a technical structure within BR&T that we acknowledge where, excuse me, we acknowledge where people have developed good technical expertise to keep them focused in a certain area, as well as over 450 patents annually being pursued within the organization. So when we start thinking about innovation, you know, if you think about the aviation industry, it really has been fueled by innovation. We wouldn't be where we are today without even being started within the aviation industry, without innovation in terms of that first flight with the Wright brothers. But as you look across the 100 years of our history, you can see that innovation has played a key step in just about every piece of the advances that we've made in terms of the aerospace sector. Whether it's, you know, being able to apply technologies that allow us to cross the Atlantic, putting on new propulsion systems, you know, the dawn of the jet age in the engine, looking at building larger, more robust platforms that are able to connect continents together with things like the 747. You know, when you look at the technologies that had to come into play to support the space program, the Apollo landing on the moon, as well as the shuttle activity that we've been engaged in, all the way through the advances that we made on the 787, all of those in terms of providing that next level of performance and capability and service comes from applying technology. So I think when people look at the Boeing Company, it's clear that we are an engineering-based, technology-based company, primarily driven by the kinds of products and services that we provide. So when we think about, you know, what are the factors that's going to change the aerospace industry, we've kind of bucket them into a couple different categories. It's digitization. You know, as more and more things become digitized, the flow of model-based systems engineering, the flow of the digital thread, and things around how you're able to capture data, that's going to make a huge change in the way things are done within our industry. The role of artificial intelligence, whether it's in the current platforms that we have today, the advances that are being made there, all the way through some of the new concepts and new platforms that are going to be coming around, those are going to be driven by the advances in artificial intelligence as well. The autonomy, you know, likewise, in terms of platforms and systems being able to act on their own and do things independently. In addition to electrification, the two things there in terms of the advent of new propulsion systems that will enable different kinds of platforms and energy generation, that's going to be huge. In terms of advanced materials and manufacturing, similarly, you know, combining both the digitization and being able to do things in advance in more complex ways is going to change the landscape as well as the increased access to space. You know, if you look at the different range of competition that is trying to develop that kind of capability, I think all of those will change the way aerospace looks, the players that are competing within the aerospace community, as well as just accelerating the pace at which things are done within the whole aerospace industry. And I think a lot of those things apply to other industries as well. I don't think the aerospace industry is unique in terms of how some of these things, the advances that are made, the innovations that are being made in some of these spaces, will start to impact other industries and other disciplines. So, you know, the whole topic that we're going to talk about today is innovation. And one thing I'll say, if you think back to some of the things that I've worked on, one thing is clear: innovation has a lot of views of what it is and what it isn't and how it's defined. You know, as I got ready to put a couple of thoughts together for this, I ran across a couple of interesting summaries of innovation. You know, if you read the pure definition of what innovation is in trying to look at it on Google, you'll find almost over 1 million different definitions of what innovation is. And then if you look at the actual definition of the word itself, you really don't get much out of that either. You know, it's the action of being innovative. So you can't grab anything from that. I think the cleanest definition is around, I think there's an Oxford definition that, you know, make changes to something and establish new methods of new ideas around a product. But even that, I think, as you think about a definition of innovation versus what it really is, I think you find there are many different views of what it is. There's many different ranges of what it is. So maybe to start off, the terminology that companies use and the way innovation is viewed across the company seems to be one of the key things, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Who's responsible for it? You know, as I think about whether it's other companies that I've had conversations with or other articles and things that I've read, that seems to be one of the key. You know, is it the initiative from the top? Is there an organization that was just stood up that feels it's their job to do? But I think how companies address who's responsible for it will, you know, plays a key role, as well as do people view incremental and radical innovation in the same context? Is it treated the same way in various companies? And then last but not least is whose role is it? It's one thing to say who's responsible for it, but then whose role is it to really go do it? So I think all of these are pieces of innovation that as companies apply and talk about innovation, you find very different views of what it is. You know, if you, as you talk about innovation, if some people will equate innovation to doing inventions. And I think one thing is clear that we've seen is that, you know, if you separate those two terms apart and you only start talking about inventions, it's very easy to slide into what we call art. You know, an invention that doesn't go anywhere or doesn't provide any value is really just art in terms of expense and things that you've done. So with that as kind of a backdrop, you know, as we talk about innovation inside the Boeing Company, this is a way that I think we feel has captured the core of the way we view it. Innovation is about bringing new and novel solutions that have positive impact and adds value to the end user. And the part that I should have added to this that's kind of inherent in the way we look at it is, and also adds value to the company. You know, having an innovation that only adds value to the end user, not being able to produce at a profit or not being able to produce in an effective way within the company really doesn't meet the caliber of what we consider innovation to be as we talk about innovation in the things that we do. So this is kind of our starting point of, you know, as we define innovation, this really is it. And the key part there, like I said, is the part that we're really adding value. If you start with the aspect of what I'm trying to do, the solution I'm trying to drive, at the end of the day has to add value to the end customer. I think that's how you best describe the kinds of things that we do inside the company. So getting into the encouragement part, I think the way that I would say, you know, addressing some of those issues or points that I had on the overall discussion around innovation, this is the chart that we use inside the company probably at the start of every CEO meeting, every meeting at the different divisions. This is our, on one page, our mission, our vision, the values that we have and the things that we're working on and the business imperatives that we have that we use to talk to just about everyone inside of the 156,000 Boeing employees. It was generated around, our Connect, Protect, Explore, and Inspire the World vision that we have that you've probably heard if you tune into Meet the Press every morning on Sunday. But that is the core of who we are, the products that we make, and the things that we do. That Connect, Protect, Explore, and Inspire, if you think about the products, really captures what we have. And then when you add on top of that through Aerospace Innovation, I think it starts to set the tone within the Boeing Company that that's the way, we do those things through applying innovation in the right way. The second layer there where you see the enterprise strategy is really around the how do we do it, and it's really broken down into three very simple pieces. It's operate as one Boeing. I said in the beginning that we really have three distinct business units supported by our research and technology organizations, as well as some other ancillary functional organizations. But at the core, there's three main business units. So operating as one Boeing, whether it's finding derivative platforms that can be applied to meet customer needs like the Air Force One or the tanker or some of the other products that we have that are derivatives of commercial that find a military application, or being able to combine solutions that we have inside of the services business to generate new value for our customers. That's really what we mean by operating as one Boeing. Building strength on strength is being able to maximize the things that we do through improvements and other things that are going on. But then the last piece there, sharpen and accelerate to win, is really around finding new ways to do things and sharpening and finding new solutions to win new programs and win new opportunities. If you look at our goals, again, accelerate innovation is circled there, is clearly one of them, along with the other goals that are kind of ancillary to what comes about as you do more innovation. And then over on the right hand side where you see Boeing behaviors, reach higher, embrace change, and learn from failure, embedded in each one of our Boeing behaviors, that's one of them. There's a little more description around what they mean inside of the Boeing Company. But I think as you read that, you'll see the words innovation, be innovative in solutions, find new ways to do things, etc. So again, that's another element of when we start talking about innovation inside the Boeing Company. We again view that as one of the Boeing behaviors that we expect every employee to find and exhibit as we go through our day-to-day tasks and day-to-day job assignments. And all of that comes about, as it says down at the bottom, which is the business imperative of finding superior value that goes to our customers, increases the shareholders' value, and provides valuable service to our communities and our partners. And so my point of this is, as we talk about encouraging innovation inside the Boeing Company, I think it starts with the recognition that innovation is embedded in just about every aspect of whether it's our vision, mission, whether it's the way we do our day-to-day strategy, whether it's the way we have our goals laid out for the next to 2025, or just in the everyday Boeing behaviors that we expect every employee to be. I think we've embedded that innovation mindset into the employee and the stakeholders that we have inside the Boeing Company. So this is just real quick on this. So that last one that I circled where it said sharpen and accelerate to win, this is basically what that represents in terms of, we have a foundation of programs. We've got backlog in our commercial services, commercial platform business that could run 7 years. So I think it's imperative that we make sure that we've got a good foundation of being able to perform on the things that we already have in our job jar. We've got a lot of initiatives going on that open up new space in terms of winning new programs and being able to improve on the performance that we have today. And then we have a group that we call Rising, second century initiatives that are going on that provide new services and platforms to the company. And I think the check mark in each one of those means that we're trying to apply innovation into each one of those. So when we talk about innovation inside the Boeing Company, we talk about innovation around what are the things that need to be done to allow us to produce product at faster rate, at better efficiency, etc. So again, tied back into that previous chart that we have, we don't consider innovation to be just in the space of the technology team or the groups that are working in the advanced concepts world. We view innovation in terms of that definition of being able to find innovative ways to solve customer problems and add value in just about every aspect, whether it's working in the technology space, finding new innovative ways to do manufacturing, finding new or innovative ways to support our financial systems with the tools and processes that we have there. I think the point of the previous chart and this chart is to say that the first step of being able to encourage innovation inside a company is to be sure that you don't let it be steam piped, stovepiped into an organization that the entire organization feel it's their job to find the innovative solutions, whether it's technical, business, or just in the day-to-day way that they go about engaging their day-to-day activities. And I think this is one of the key differentiators, as I thought about different things that have gone on in the past. It's very easy for companies to look at innovation with at one time we had inside the Boeing Company an organization called White Space that was looking purely at the next generation innovation, and I think we spent a lot of time talking about that. I think other companies have done the same thing, but I think as you embed this kind of thinking into the whole organization, you expand the space of people that are looking for those innovative solutions. And at times, some of those innovative solutions can be applied in other areas or other sectors that you may not know of as you're working through those. So in terms of growing innovation, and this starts to get more into some of the things that we're doing inside of our Boeing Research and Technology organization to grow. Once you've got that culture set up inside of a company that everyone feels innovation is part of their DNA or part of the mission that you've got. As I said in the beginning, technology is one of the core things of our company. So you have to have that part of generating innovation as well. You need to have that engine that looks for those new spaces and new ways of doing things. So how do we innovate from that domain? I think it starts with looking at our customer needs, both whether it's military. You have to understand the government needs in terms of where different priorities are headed, where our airline customers are headed in terms of what their needs are, and likewise in services. I think we look at all of those in terms of that whole gamut of need to come up with our strategies that create and sustain some of the key objectives that we have in terms of providing next generation platforms, the overall business that we're trying to sustain and grow. We take those strategies, working with partners, whether the partners are in the academia, the universities, various industries, trade associations, etc., to work those strategies through. And the reason we show that chart is that it's not just the supplier partners, because many times in some of the things that we do, especially as we work, whether it's certification or some of the other things, you have to have a very broad set of partners that you work on, and finding innovative ways to work with that whole set of partners is critical, because you need both of those to come together to, at the end of the day, provide those innovative solutions that span the gamut of those, whether it's in the product, it's the way you build it, it's the way those products support a customer need, or the way they turn a return to your shareholders. So supporting our R&D, the way we do R&D in BR&T, like I said, we look for our own internal R&D activity, and I'll say a little bit more about that in a second. But like I said, the external or joint activity is just as critical in terms of that those partnerships, whether it's through the university, whether it's through within the BR and Boeing Research and Technology arm. We have contracted research and development work that we do in concert with government agencies where we have a common interest or a common need of working through a technology or looking at the application of advanced technologies to solve problems or put on advanced platforms, etc. As I said, working with industry trade groups or supplier relationship or even some of the global customers that we have, because our backlog and some of the work that we do does have a very large global component to it as well. So spending a second on kind of the global aspect of our R&D activity, we use this chart to kind of talk about kind of a key aspect. I mean, when you talk about R&D and global innovation, there's about $1.6 trillion we've pegged as annual R&D spend that goes on a global scale. If you look at compared to, you know, we think there's roughly $450 million of relevant R&D activity that goes on inside the domestic U.S. So when you look the difference between those two numbers, it's clear that you've got to have a global strategy in terms of how you work technology and how you find innovation and partner with different individuals. And so we use this chart to talk about those three parts, is that we're really looking for that innovation, you know, those new novel products, access to world-class technology. So the only way to do that is to have a global view of how you're going to do that. And then tied into that, you've got to have those partnerships on a global scale that allow you to yield, you know, that insight. And then by doing both of those allows you to have some local presence as you do your development and innovative research. It allows you to not only invest in local talent and be able to tap into that kind of capability, but it also helps you in that dialogue in terms of the kinds of things that you're looking for, the kind of problems that you're trying to solve. The other thing it does is we work on a global scale with our technology. It allows us to be recognized as a local company. You know, I'll show you a chart here in a second in our international R&D centers. But as we work campaigns or new initiatives at the business unit level, whether it's a new military campaign for a country, oftentimes they will look for, well, what have you done inside the country? What other activities that you have going on? And we will often point to some of the things that we have going on in some of our international centers or international collaborations with companies that allow us to leverage that work as well in terms of the things that we're doing inside of a company to support their development and activities as well. So in terms of our Boeing Research and Technology, this gives you a picture of how we're laid out. We have a total of 11 Boeing Research and Technology research centers. 5 of them are domestic, kind of regionalized across the U.S. You can see there, you know, they spread all the way from kind of more in the Midwest, the South, all the way to Puget Sound in Washington State. Those are our 5 domestic U.S. research centers, and they're supported by 6 international centers. And you can kind of see the location on the map that we have. I think a key thing that we found as we kind of laid out the international centers as well is that we are able to support innovation that's happening on a 24/7 basis. You know, we have meetings where, you know, and projects that kind of span that time horizon where you're able to work projects in India and find the results or the next phase of the project the next morning when, you know, the domestic team comes in in the Midwest. So I think we see it not only as being able to tap into a wide range of skills and capability locally, but also able to expand the footprint of technology and innovation and work that we're doing by having a more global reach. The other thing I'd say about our international centers, they provide the conduit for us to work with the international organizations, that support the things that we're doing in terms of partnerships. So in terms of the collaborations that we have going on in these various areas, we lean on those international centers to help with that collaboration, be sure that we've got everything pointed in the right direction and working kind of that common thread of what we're doing. So in terms of developing and sustaining innovation inside the company, I listed some things here that, as we've worked various aspects, as I've looked at other companies and talked to other companies in terms of things that, it's one thing to, as I said in the beginning, get things going, enabling stuff to happen in the beginning, growing it, but that development, sustaining, making sure that it's yielding those products. I think these are just a couple of highlight things that, that we've observed over the years that really make the difference between whether or not a company is really successful in their innovation thread versus those that seem to start and stop over and over. And I think at the top, it starts with that enterprise support all the way from the board of directors and the CEO down. And I think, the purpose of the first two charts in terms of showing you how we start at the top and flow everything down to the 156 individuals, I think that's what, that aspect of having everyone see that this is important at the top and where innovation fits at the top has really been important. And I think it's really made the difference between everyone moving from innovation as someone else's thing to do versus I need to figure out how innovation is occurring in everything I'm doing in my day-to-day activity. What is the new and innovative way that I can do my job to get something done? Applies, you can easily see how it applies in the technology space, but I think as you peel that back and look at all the other aspects of what it really takes to get successful products to the customer and yield the return to the shareholders, you've got to have that whole thread. It's not enough just to have a technical team that's coming up with innovations and maybe an innovative solution that you can't get all the way through to deliver product to the end. So again, that support at the top, that enterprise support, and having everyone understand that's what we're trying to do and the role that innovation plays, I think is critical. The next piece, I think that, and it's the same, we've been with the company a long time, and I've seen the starts and stops of some of the things that we've done in years past. Resources has been another one. The degree that the company puts the resources required to execute the vision that they have in terms of that enterprise view has been critical. I think most technical teams have heard the concept of the valley of death. It's easy to find ideas, to work them, to move them from the back of an envelope maybe to some PowerPoint slides or even maybe a prototype. But when it comes to turning that idea, that innovation, that thought into real products, real things that's going out the door and generating revenue and adding value, that's the hard part. That's that valley of death where it's not quite, everyone's not quite bought in to find those resources to run it to ground, to bring it to that state. That's where a lot of ideas tend to fall apart or stay at the idea or the art stage. And so as a company is focused in on the areas that they're willing to put the resources on and the areas that they want their teams to be working on finding those innovative solutions, I think is another critical piece in the way companies are able to sustain that innovation and development culture within their organizations. Tied into that, infrastructure and tools. I say infrastructure meaning kind of the organizational structure of how innovation is worked within the company is kind of critical, along with the tools to support that innovation. We've gone through, over the years that I've been at Boeing, a couple different ways to approach innovation. At one time, we had an organization called the Chairman's Initiative that was looking at everyone and his brother looking for able to turn in ideas of new businesses that Boeing should be in, or new concepts of products that we should be supporting. But he really didn't have a good foundation or background in terms of allowing the normal engineer or an employee to understand how that concept fit or doesn't fit within the product structure or the business that Boeing had. And so I think we've changed that in several ways, to the point that today we do have a group called Boeing Innovation Ventures, and that group isn't as much about the venture aspect as much as it is about putting some tools in place that help teams that have good ideas find other experts across Boeing to collaborate and run to ground some ideas that they may have. It allows them to have some tools on how to better evaluate the tools that they have, the ideas that they have. And the ideas can be on the production floor or in a new concept or a new solution for the day-to-day work that they have. It doesn't have to be some new product that we're trying to develop. So I guess my point there is that when the organization views what they're really after is innovation on a broad scale, being able to put the infrastructure and tools and systems in place and subject matter experts to help people with ideas run those to ground, I think is critical. And I think in terms of recognizing where success is being made on finding innovative solutions to solve problems, whether it's new products and or novel ways of solving some of the harder problems that we have inside the Boeing Company, is critical. And so we have a very dedicated mission inside of our internal and external communications team, as well as kind of our publications team, to be sure that we're using the vehicles that we have in communication to let people know where people are coming up with innovative solutions, how they've done it, recognizing the value add to the company and or customers around those things that they're doing, and then celebrating that through the recognition that we have, whether it's Employee of the Year or Innovative Team or some of the other things that we have, celebrating and keeping that idea forward that what the company's really looking for is innovation defined the way we've defined it, not necessarily only in an engineering or technical standpoint. I think makes a difference in being sure that we're sustaining innovation across the entire company. And then the last piece I have there is professional development. Earlier this year, the company increased their investment in personal development in terms of different ventures to the tune of $100 million. So putting resources behind allowing your people to stay state of the art in terms of these new technologies that are coming out, bringing classes from some of the leading industries and universities and new concepts like additive manufacturing or artificial intelligence or cyber, bringing those and putting those in a context that helps our employees apply those to problems that we have, I think is critical, again, in terms of not only the part of looking for the employee to do, but also helping the employee be sure that they've got the tools and skills needed to stay innovative and stay working on the leading edge of the technologies that we work. So I think what I've tried to do is kind of paint a picture of how we view innovation kind of on this global scale, because our products are global and our competition is global. So I hope that I've kind of painted a picture that in order to stay where we are in that leading edge, we've got to be sure that whether it's from a technology standpoint and working with all the partners that I described earlier, and or working on all the other aspects that are needed to allow us to have money to fuel into doing that advanced R&D and bringing those advanced R&D products to the floor and to the customer. You've got to have all those pieces of innovation, otherwise you won't be around past the second century. So I think hopefully through these charts you've seen that I think we've been working each one of those aspects as we try to make sure that we're staying innovative kind of on that global scale in terms of doing all the things we need to be sure that we've got the right products and solutions. So that's kind of my set of slides, kind of some of my talking points. I guess we can open it up or pass it back off to you, Kristen.
Sure. Thank you, Tony. We do have some questions that came in while you were speaking. We have about 10 minutes left. So I'll ask this one first. One of our students asked, do you feel like working for an innovative company, are they more willing to take financial risks on some projects that haven't yet been proven?
I think it depends. Let me word it this way. I think the key is how you've described the value in the end and the road to get there and the steps to get there. I think, back, I referenced earlier, we've had an activity we call Chairman's Innovation Initiative, which everyone and his brother was out looking for. I hate to word it that way, but that's basically the way it was. But we're looking for new and novel ways to do things, and that didn't yield, I think, what the question was around. There weren't resources put in to move things to that next level. But I do think if the company is focused in an area and you can describe projects and its solutions that really meet an unmet customer need, it's very hard to kill those projects because the need never goes away. I read a quote from someone one time that said, you can kill an idea, but you can't kill the need. And so maybe the easy way to summarize it is you've got to be able to shape the program and the project in a way that it's manageable and you can buy down or work down the risk that the company can see the end state and be successful in the end state. That's more important than, I think, some of the other aspects. You've got to be able to show that, yes, we can bring this innovative solution to market in a timeline and at a level that makes sense for the kind of investment that you're asking a company to make.
Great. And our second question from a student was, what would you say is the most interesting or compelling part of your job that you get to do day to day?
I think the most compelling part of my job is combining the technical understanding of what we're trying to do with the business and how it impacts the overall ecosystem of our development activities. I work with some outstanding engineers and scientists that, I will be honest, it doesn't take very long for me to get lost in the technology of what we're talking about. But what it will do is, I think, being able to help them break it down into a way that is understandable to senior engineering leadership is critical. What problem are we trying to solve? What exactly are we trying to get out of it, and how does it pay off in terms of what we're trying to do? I find that very, very rewarding because it allows me to keep my technical flavor engaged, but it also helps me blend the other things that I think add value to bring value to the Boeing Company. And that's why I'm still still at Boeing. I just enjoy that. And if you look at the range of products that we get to work on, one day I may be we're talking about building a facility to do a certain area of technology. The next week we may be talking about, an advanced platform that commercial is looking at building.
Great. And we just had a question that came in. How would you say that you find a good work-life balance, especially when your work is either really tough or very busy?
I think so. I've been very see the history of things that I've done. I think I've been very fortunate to spend time with executives that when I was back in the Washington office, I would travel with many of our senior executives, and one of the things I realized early on was that many of them didn't have that work-life balance. They were off kilter to work, and the light bulb came on one day. We were sitting talking, and I got a phone call from my relatively newborn. I was a couple years old. We're saying goodnight, and hung up the phone. And they said, that's interesting. My kid never would have done that. Never would have called me, or never. And I think that helped me put in perspective. These jobs only last so long, but those relationships that you have and the things that you do that complement your day-to-day work will last forever. And so I think you just have to make a commitment that these things have to fit in my job regardless. Back when I lived in St. Louis and I was working on some programs, part of my daily routine was to drop my kids off at school. So I would spend the time in the morning, talk to them, etc. It's very easy, just like everything else. I mean, you can spend every waking minute working the problems inside the Boeing Company. And a lot of people do that. I mean, a lot of people overwork. But at the end of the day, I think there was, and this applies to every company, so I don't want to make it sound like it's only the Boeing Company, but most large companies, are not single-threaded companies, meaning that if they pulled an employee out, it may be difficult for a while, but they can figure out a way to replace that individual with capability eventually. It may not be tomorrow. And I guess my point of that is you have to keep that in perspective, that, yeah, the things I'm working on are really important. It's really fun to me, but at the end of the day, it can't be that that's all you do. So I think it's kind of a personal commitment you need to make, that I'm going to spend time to take care of my health, because I'll say this, you've got to be sure that you're healthy in terms of, the physical health, in terms of, having a good life, career, and then your emotional health that's outside of work. I think both of those are just as important as spending time to have a solid career foundation.
Great, thank you. We have about 5 minutes left, so I'll ask the last question that we like to ask of a lot of our presenters. What courses or skills would you recommend that our students or young alumni develop at this stage if they would like to work in a field or career similar to yours?
I think the one that's I'll put it as more of an overall comment. I think the ability to work in teams in like the innovation, I think there's a course that we have that pulls all of the disciplines together, where I forget the name of it now off the top of my head, but where you pull various disciplines to solve problems. I think that skill is probably one of the most important ones that I've seen, that starts separating people that do well versus those that maybe struggle a little bit, in terms of being able to work with a group, being able to pull together the diversity of ideas and perspectives of how people look at a problem in different ways. That ability is really critical in terms of solving problems and being successful in an innovation space. Because part of the reason we go global is all the smart ideas and approaches aren't inside the walls of the Boeing Company. And likewise in teams, if you have a team that is kind of single-threaded, everyone's kind of thinking the same, seeing it the same, or same kind of background and disciplines, that gets hard. So the ability to work in a group and pull those different pieces or different perspectives of ideas together, and the classes that you're in early that help you hone those skills, I think are really important. That's one. The other one that sometimes people will ask me, what was the most important class you think you took when you were in school? And the class that maybe helped me change my thinking probably more than anyone else, and don't ask, I can't get into a lot of detail on why, but it just does, was, I think it was statistics 201, or I forget the number now, but it was the very first statistics class, and I had a professor, Professor Razoff, I think was his name, and it wasn't that the material itself was the thing, it was his discipline on critical thinking, following the rules, and being sure you're doing it the right way. Just stuck with me. And so, I mean, I think that's another piece of it. And I think we get that in a lot of the classes that we have there at IIT, in terms of being able to think critically around a problem, dissect it in the right way, build your case around why you're taking a certain path or a certain solution that you have, and the pros and cons of that solution. I think those skills, in terms of being able to do that once you get out in industry and being able to articulate that, are some of the key pieces.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Tony. I think we are just about out of time. So thank you again. We have really enjoyed it. And we will also be sharing this recording on the alumni website and through social media. So if you have someone who didn't get to attend live, please share it with them. And thank you again, Tony. We've really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you. I always enjoy talking about innovation, and I always enjoy, hearing perspectives, and I learn something every time we have conversations like this. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Great. All right. Well, thank you again. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording now. So.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.